Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Itır TOKSÖZ, and I'm an assistant professor of international relations at Doğuş University in Istanbul, Turkey. And I'm also the national coordinator for Turkey at Moon Village Association. And today I will be presenting you my research on the lunar exploration in science fiction, Fly Me to the Moon. Now, my area is especially in international security, and for the last 10 years or so, I have been working on science, technology, and international relations with a clear focus on space politics, actually. But I also do a lot of research and teaching on international relations through arts, and when I combine the two, I also study space politics through science fiction or science fiction for space politics. So, departing from the premise of Morton Kaplan, who suggested that history is the great laboratory within which international action occurs, and also taking into account the quote by Ursula K. Le Guin, the renowned science fiction author, that the future is a laboratory for trying out ideas in, I see science fiction as an important resource in which we can search for past, present, and future depictions of how we see humanity and humanity's endeavors, be they political, legal, economic, social, or cultural. So the research question that I ask in this presentation is, what is the role of the moon in the past, present, and future space races? And to understand this, I study works of science fiction to learn lessons and cautionary tales about humanity's next episode on the moon. Now, how do I do this? I actually, first of all, wanted to prepare a list of works of science fiction that dealt with the topic of lunar exploration. I specifically focused on books and TV series or films in these works, and I entered entries on Wikipedia, Goodreads, and other websites entitled Moon in Film, Novels Set on the Moon, Moon in Fiction, and I also consulted certain social media groups, especially in Facebook, on Facebook that are on science fiction, to get suggestions as to which works that I should look into, which has a clear focus on lunar exploration. I did this with the goal of determining general frames of stories in which the moon is portrayed in science fiction. I must admit that this is a work in progress, and I will be presenting you the way that this research is going into, and as much as possible, my findings so far. Now, so far, I was able to identify four main frames. I looked at several different works and identified that the four main frames that I found were moon landing, before the moon landing, actual moon landing stories, alternative histories on of the moon, and moon as a base or colony. Of course, I must admit that these frames are not mutually exclusive, and a work of science fiction can fit into multiple frames. Now, I'm going to introduce you and talk a little bit about each one of these frames one by one, because this is where my research is heading towards. Now, the moon landing, before the moon landing, are works of science fiction that are from earlier times. So these are earlier works of science fiction, and they often talk about possibility and difficulty of moon landing. Given the fact that there was limited scientific data on spaceflight at that time, many of these works are also bordering fantasy. Now, within this section, I can give examples such as From the Earth to the Moon in 1865 and Around the Moon in 1869 by Jules Verne, High Vacuum, which is a book written in 1957 by Charles Eric Main, The Man Who Sold the Moon by Robert Heinlein, and Prelude to Space by Arthur C. Clarke. Also, films such as A Trip to the Moon or The Mouse on the Moon are examples that talk about the moon landing or the prospect of moon landing before the actual moon landing took place. The second category deals with the actual moon landing stories. These are generally about travails of getting to the moon, and most of them are naturally about the Apollo program. The films or TV series such as First Man of 2018, Apollo 13 of 1995, and From the Earth to the Moon 1998 are all within this category. One might question whether these are science fiction or not, but in many of the venues they are categorized as such, so I thought I would include them in my research as how the actual moon landing is portrayed as. The third frame is the alternative histories of the moon. So these are the alternative visions of the superpower space race, especially, such as Millennium by Ben Bova, The Pilgrim Project by Hank Searles, and Apollo at Go by John Sutton. These are the books that deal with this topic. And in terms of TV series and movies, we can also mention For All Mankind, which is being broadcast since 2019, presently as well, and the film Iron Sky from 2012. So these are the stories of what would have happened if something went the other way in history. Then the greatest number of works are in the frame which deals with the moon as a base or as colony. Now, there are multiple frames actually within this frame, and it will take me too long a time to mention all of the works, so I will only touch upon the major frameworks I have found within this frame without referring to the actual works. Sometimes within these works, the moon is portrayed as an outpost of humankind's outreach into the solar system or interstellar travel. It can also be a ship instead of being a satellite, sort of disguised as a satellite, but indeed a ship. It can be the place of a scientific colony or a colony with prospects of future independence from Earth. It can be a resource for space mining, and it can be home for commercial activities, also a touristic destination within the same frame. It can also be the home for an international organization or a political authority, and it can portray a next stage in human evolution. So these are the things that I have found as themes so far in the existing works of science fiction that I have studied. Now, as I have said, this is a work in progress, so these frames are going to be developed further. My aim for the next stage in this research is to enrich my literature review, increase the number of works in my database, and give further details of political, legal, and economic stories. Now, as for conclusion, I can say that in many of these works, the lunar exploration is imagined as a conflict or cooperation rather than a the lunar exploration is imagined as a conflict or competition and not so much as cooperation. The cooperative potential on the moon is actually the exception rather than the rule. And this finding underlines the importance of the efforts of transnational non-state actors such as the Moon Village, which is a platform for both transnational cooperation and interdisciplinary cooperation in lunar exploration. Another caution that I see is the dangers of seeing the moon as the next entity to be colonized. This is in line with exploitation of lunar resources and the race to profit from them. And this warning is not only on state actors, but also on non-state actors. So actually this point goes hand in hand with a cautious and even hesitant perception of especially commercial activities on the moon. Thank you very much.